All right, this is exciting, isn't it?
Here we go, guys, in 5, 4, 3.
Here we go.
It's time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Thank you for good programming, and I appreciate the content and really enjoyed every moment.
It's a privilege to have you on your station and listen. It's good stuff. It's very educational.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, thanks for being here this Friday, July 24th. Congratulations. You got through another week. And you right now should be sitting back and thinking, what exactly does bring me joy? What will I be doing this weekend that will bring me peace? What can I do this weekend that will remind me why I am resisting? Think about it. Before we get to the news, most of which is kind of sucky, that is a proper term, sucky, I want to share something that brought a smile to my face today. There is a peregrine falcon, Josephine, who has been living around Chicago's University of Illinois at Chicago West campus. She has a mate now. Josephine has a mate. His name is Tony, and he came from St. Mary's site in 2024. He is now Josephine's partner. And why did this especially bring me joy, other than the fact that Josephine now has somebody to pal around with? Her mate, Tony, is named after Tony Fitzpatrick. Tony Fitzpatrick was a very famous artist, a kind of famous actor, a poet, a playwright. But if you followed him on social media, you knew that he had two passions, birds and dogs. He wrote for years about bird watching, about how he would go to the park to feed the birds and what that would do for his mental health and his soul. He would also, because, frankly, giving wild birds breadcrumbs while it's been popularized is not really good for them. So he would also, in addition to what he was feeding them, he would bring these little bags of bird seed. And when he saw like a little kid throwing bread into the water, he would go over and he'd say, hey, you want to feed the birds? This is really, really good and healthy for them. And he would give them the little bag of bird seed to feed them. He traveled a lot to birdwatch to find special birds that he hadn't seen before. He wrote about birds. He wrote poems about birds. And now there is a bird that carries his name. And that makes me happy. Hope it makes you happy too. Okay. Friday. Remember, the phone lines and text lines are going to be open for the entire first half of the show today. Here's something interesting. The front digital homepage for the New York Times. I open it up and what do I see? The three main stories. Measles cases hit new record in the United States as vaccination rates wanes. We have more measles cases, according to CNN, than we've had in 35 years. And for those of you who are not aware, measles is wildly contagious. It is so easy to spread from one person or one kid to another. And it is so easy to prevent with a vaccination. Another story, Centers for Disease Control expands cyclosporiasis outbreak to 9 states. Yeah. Like I said, the Taylor Farm salad's still on the grocery store shelves here in Chicago. That was originally the company that was pointed to as one of the places that was spreading cyclospora parasites. But then 24 hours later, we were told it was a false positive. A lot of people are not sure to trust that because apparently the company that owns Taylor Farms is a big donor for Donald Trump. So who knows? Yeah, 9 states have serious, pretty much the entire country has cases of cyclosporiasis, but in 9 states, it's blooming. Explosive diarrhea. You know it, you love it, you can't live without it. In some people, according to our infectious disease expert, Dr. Stockton Mayer, in some people, it comes and goes. But in other people, you can have it. It appears to get better. And then after a while, it comes back again, gets better, comes back again. And since it's not something that your doctor, well, maybe now with the outbreak, this will change, but generally it's not something doctors really think about. You might have to ask your doctor to do the specific test for this. Oh, and the other big story on the New York Times home digital page, Federal Drug Administration advisors reject one peptide, but push to broaden access. You know, peptides, that's the new thing that's supposed to, make us all healthy and buff, I guess. So good job, RFK. Good job. It is just unbelievable. It is unbelievable. Well, actually, I was just going to say it's unbelievable for the country that led the way and was the gold standard. The Centers for Disease Control were the gold standard for finding treatments, catching outbreaks, letting people know what was going on, doing some of the testing. And that is no longer the case. Like everything else about us, the rest of the world has come to look askance at what we are doing. I guess RFK Jr. hasn't embarrassed Trump enough yet, because, that's, of course, he's also a man, so there's a much higher threshold. Pam Bondi's gone, Kristi Noem's gone, Tulsi Gabbard's gone. What do they have in common? They're incompetent, yeah, but the rest of his cabinet is too. But they're all women. There is a much lower threshold for women to be fired in the Trump administration. So I don't know. Maybe RFK Jr.'s wife, the actress Cheryl Hines, maybe she'll do something that embarrasses Trump, and then he'll fire RFK Jr. But hasn't happened yet, as our reputation in this, among many other things, is going down the tubes. Also, there was an interesting, I don't know if you follow Aaron Parnas. He has a major following on social media, and he keeps his nose to the grindstone. He follows all the different media outlets, and oftentimes he will post a video telling you what's going on before you even see it anywhere else. He reported that earlier this week, Donald Trump, quote unquote, melted down in the White House. Melted down. Was screaming and yelling and cursing. Why? Because he can't figure out how to end the Iran war. And he knows he needs to. He has no idea how to do it. And he was described as melting down, yelling, using very bad words, and talking about how awful the Iranians were. I guess because the Iranians won't play ball. He has shown the Iranians that they are much more powerful than they ever thought. We talked to University of Chicago political science professor Robert Pape yesterday, and he said that there is a shift in power, not only in the Middle East, but globally. He said that's going to take us a long time to figure out and get used to. He now believes that after Russia, China, and the United States, if you're looking for a fourth great power, He believes it's now Iran. And he believes that Iran is now the big dog in the Middle East. And we have Donald Trump to thank for that. The man who promised no more wars, let alone a forever war. He is screaming behind closed doors at the White House because he has no idea how to get out of this mess. All he knows is that he needs to get out of this mess. So, there's that. And doesn't that bode well for us? Things are not getting any better when it comes to Iran. There was some rumor that there was some sort of ceasefire agreement, but apparently nobody agreed to it. So I guess it's not a ceasefire agreement. Maybe it was a ceasefire suggestion. Same old, same old. Oil prices are $100 or more a barrel. Yep. And there's been reporting that, one of the things I've been wondering how long it would take was how long it would take for our Middle Eastern allies to realize that they have to start protecting themselves. That was why they always agreed to all these U.S. bases. We were supposed to bring the might. We were supposed to scare everybody else into behaving because we had their back. They have learned the hard way that that is not necessarily true. We have been proven in everything we've done so far to be weak in the Middle East. We have not been protecting our allies the way they thought we would. And I've wondered, why are they just all sitting around and not getting involved? Well, it turns out, according to the Wall Street Journal, they have been getting involved. It's supposed to have been a secret. But the Wall Street Journal is reporting today that both Bahrain and Kuwait secretly sent jets to attack sites inside Iran. This is the first time these countries have directly retaliated against Tehran. So, the war is getting bigger. The war is getting bigger, and we still have the Houthis in Yemen who want to close down Bab el-Mandeb, the other strait that these ships go through, right around the corner from the Strait of Hormuz. What is going on? Donald Trump is trying to say that anything that the Houthis do that's bad is going to be because of Iran, and we're going to hold them responsible. We have been dropping bombs every day on Iran. I guess the thought was if we continued to do that or we started that up again, that they would remember that we are to be somebody to be afraid of, and they would just fold? Nope. That is not happening. They are not folding. We have shown them how powerful they can be. Yay, us. Okay. Let's go back to the peregrine falcon named Tony. I liked that story. That story made me feel good. So, we're going into the midterms. Trump has created a very unpopular war that is certainly going to hurt Republicans in the midterms, in part because they're so afraid of him that they're afraid they could vote, if both houses of the legislature voted a War Powers Act and cut off all the funding for this war, the war would go away. That's one thing Robert Pape reminded me of yesterday, that yes, we might have just made an announcement that the Vietnam War was over, but the Vietnam War truly ended when Congress cut off the money. And Congress has the power to cut off the money for this effort. But instead, they keep giving Trump more and more and more money, even though they know this is an extraordinarily unpopular war. There was a report today on CNN that said that since in the time of polling, nothing has ever been as unpopular as this war is right now. Does that shock you? I don't think it does. Donald Trump knows it. That is why he's in the Oval Office screaming, quote unquote, melting down. Because when you surround yourself with imbeciles, maybe they are afraid to do anything other than what you tell them because they kind of know they don't really belong in the job. And without you, they don't have the job. But the problem is when you really need good advice, the imbeciles are not going to give you good advice because they're imbeciles. See how that works? I'm sorry. Did I shout at you? I apologize. Okay. Shake it off, Joan. Shake it off. What else did I want to talk to you about? Oh, yes. Donald Trump is supposed to any minute now make a speech. I think CNN said he was going to be, talking about energy or something like that, but everybody believes that he will say something about the Iran war because how could he not? Well, as we get closer and closer to the midterms, Donald Trump is going to do more of what we've seen him do, which is just flat out lie about what his administration is doing and what they have accomplished. Lie, 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 lie. If you are going to go to your local coffee shop and maybe talk with some of your friends over breakfast who are Republicans, and they point out all of the successes Trump is having, you might want to arm yourself with some facts. This morning on MS Now, their economist, a guy by the name of Steve Ratner, joined them to point out that a couple of things Trump is saying are lies. Trump is saying that he has increased manufacturing jobs, increased jobs, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Steve Ratner had the graphs, had the numbers, and called out the lies. Listen to Steve Ratner.
Yeah, again, it's kind of incredible to hear the president describe himself as the manufacturing president, and I applaud his ambitions, but let's just talk about what the reality is. The reality is that manufacturing, obviously you had COVID and all the stuff going on, but it got as high as 12.9 million jobs back here. And then it started to decline, and it simply continued to decline under Trump. So in fact, rather than gaining any manufacturing jobs, we've lost 75,000 manufacturing jobs since Trump arrived. He also likes to talk about the building boom. I think on the show yesterday, he talked about $19 trillion of new investment in America. That is obviously a crazy number. But in any event, when you look at something like factory building, you can see that the factory building went up sharply under Biden. A lot of this had to do with the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, incentives for clean energy. Companies were out building stuff. Then it peaked, and now it has just been going down under Trump, down to a $175 billion rate from a peak of $250 billion. Trump also likes to talk about data centers and how much they're going to help this manufacturing boom, so to speak. And in fact, you can see data center construction has gone up a bit. It's up to $43 billion, but not nearly enough to compensate for how much actual factory loss has been achieved. And of course, data centers employ not so many people. Factories employ a lot of people. So again, no manufacturing boom, no manufacturing renaissance evident in any of the numbers. And tariffs played a role in this. They raised the cost of steel and aluminum and discouraged businesses from building manufacturing facilities here.
Liar, liar, pants on fire. And what he said about data centers, I spoke, and I've read a lot about this, but I spoke with somebody, and data centers only create jobs when they are being built. They can, a few construction jobs. Once a data center is up and running, it requires almost no human interaction or supervision. I saw one article that said basically once a data center is up and running, one person per shift basically just walks around a large empty data center where all the little machines are blinking and makes sure nothing goes awry. And then the next shift, one person walks around these huge data centers just to make sure all the lights are still blinking. So he's absolutely right. Data centers are not sources of jobs in any meaningful way. So I just thought that you should have some information that would help you to chat with your friends who might be Republicans, if indeed they are still around and you are still talking to them and they are still talking to you. I saw Jonathan Last. He's a member of the Bulwark. He was part of their podcast. And Jonathan talked about how Donald Trump will never forgive J.D. Vance for being right about Iran. They said Marco Rubio, like after Benjamin Netanyahu left the Situation Room, Marco Rubio said something tepid like, well, that doesn't really, what he said doesn't really seem to be borne out by the facts. But J.D. Vance was on record as, no, we shouldn't do this. We shouldn't do this. This is a mistake. And now that he has been proven right, according to the members of the Bulwark, they said he will never forgive J.D. Vance for being right. It would have been fine had J.D. Vance been wrong, and he could have needled him about it, like, hey, you remember how wrong you were about Iran? But J.D. Vance was right. And Donald Trump, they said, will never forgive him for that. And they both talked about, all the members of the Bulwark have talked about how it's kind of like with a lot of their Republican friends who didn't break with Trump. They said that a lot of those people still won't talk to them, not because they still embrace Trump, but because they're so angry that the Never Trumpers had it right and they didn't. And they can't talk to them anymore because they can't face that. Yay. That's some maturity in action, isn't it? But, that's borne out. There was a study done that said that something like 60 or more % of the women who voted for Trump had no college education. And when they did a deeper dive, they found that many of those women voted for Trump, not because they liked what Trump was doing, but because they wanted to put roadblocks in front of women who they felt made them look bad, women who were successful, women who had a career, women who were doing well for themselves, that they would rather, one MAGA woman said, I would give up my right to vote if it meant that liberal women could never vote again. Because, again, MAGAs are weak. MAGAs are jealous. They feel somehow that life didn't do them right. They should have been more successful. They should have made more money. Their life should have been so much better. And why wasn't it? Not because of them or anything they do or any decisions they made, because of outside forces, liberals, immigrants. That's why I'm not doing well. Anyway, enough about me. Let's take a break and get to your calls and texts right after this.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Don't turn that dial. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now.
A fair balance where the facts come out.
On WCPT 820.
You know how we run that ad for Patty's show where she talks about people who hate listen? I don't usually see a lot of that in the text line, but somebody texted in today that they were listening to a different radio show last week, and the governor, I assume, it just says the governor, I assume they mean J.B. Pritzker, was on the radio spouting lies and misinformation, and that he is a Trumpian. a Trumpian politician. I just want to share with you sometimes the texts that I get. And part of what that person was angry about is that J.B. Pritzker said gas prices were lower. And then the person said, yes, but they didn't say that he suspended the gas tax. Well, yes, he suspended the gas tax because that is all he has control over. And yes, that did bring down the price of a gallon of gas. I would think you would be happy about that. I don't really see where that's lies and misinformation. Whatever. Welcome to my life. Let's go to the phone lines. Our good friend Jim is on the line from Chicago. Hey, Jim, it's Friday. How are you?
Hi, Joan. I haven't tasted anything green in a month.
You and me both. Unless because I told Ray, I said, because we had some salad in the fridge when this broke out. I said, well, we could cook it. I've cooked salad before. It's a little bit kind of like spinach, only soupier.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think I'll kick the bucket for lack of leafy vegetables. That was out of the blue. But Mr. Pape is terrific last night, but he had me thinking about the powers of the purse. Now, they'll be sorely tested, Joan, in January of 2027 with the help of God if we're all here in one piece. But think of it. They've got to tackle the genocide in Gaza, the ICE, this war. I mean, so they got a lot of work to do when they hit the ground. But Jamie Raskin, we have some tremendous representatives once they get the gavel. But the problem is, Sean, Trump will veto everything, but we can't put any positive legislation through because Trump will veto it.
Of course. And,
yeah.
I thought it was so interesting because Professor pointed out that Trump he bragged about the fact that he was going to make housing more affordable when there was a bipartisan bill passed by both the Senate and the House on just that, ways to make housing more affordable. Trump wouldn't sign it. What the heck?
Yeah, the first decent bill that came down the pike, and that I can even recall. But he's wedded to this 2025 and this Heritage Foundation, but he doesn't really understand it. But there's people around him that understand it. But how in the heck? I can't see how they can keep this up. All it does is make everybody sick to their stomach. I mean, you can't turn on the news or anything, and everything is so frustrating. The point is, we got it. Once we get the House, I don't know how they can do it, but they have to look at all the funding very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes, and even if we don't take the Senate, if we take the House, there's going to be subpoenas, there's going to be investigations. It wouldn't surprise me if at some point there was an impeachment process, though I think they realize that that there are more important fish to fry. There's a lot more corruption and stuff going on. I don't know. I think impeachment would be on the list, but fairly far down.
Yeah,
anyway.
No, I agree, Joe. But I mean, it would take, the impeachment. It'd have to be all the ducks would have to be absolutely in a row where it actually put pressure on them to resign or something like that. So I don't think that can happen. But the point is the power of the purse, like Mr. Pape said yesterday, that's our attack point. And I know we've got good House of Representative people to look at this very seriously and try to bring back America to our centers. And you have a great weekend, Joan. And
thank you, Jim.
Another week to go until November 3rd.
Yep. Thank you, Jim.
Joan. Take care.
I told you that Donald Trump was going to be speaking from the Oval Office. I have been, oh my God, I've been keeping an eye on it. I have it on with closed captioning because, as you know, I really can't bear the sound of him. He is again saying that we are the hottest country on earth. Woo! Smoking. We are the hottest country on earth. He also talked about Venezuela and how Exxon and other companies are really, doing very well in Venezuela. And, we're also taking oil from Venezuela. Okay. And he knows Venezuela really, really well. You know why? You know how? I don't know if he still does, but he used to own the Miss Universe pageant. And he said, Miss Venezuela always did really well. So, so I know the country. Think about that. Miss Venezuela always did really well in the Miss Universe pageant, so he knows the country. What? What? Okay. That makes no sense. Here's a text from Bob in Elgin. We have so much to thank the Trump administration for, making measles great again, gas at $5 a gallon, and a war in Iran we've won over 40 times. The list just seems endless. You are correct. We've not only won the war, Bob, we have decimated their ability to make nukes. We have decimated their military. We have decimated their Navy. You remember all that, right, Bob? So I'm not quite sure who we're still at war with. Anyway, maybe that's a question for another day. What do you think? Let's go back to the phone lines. Our friend Carl from Kankakee is on the line. Hey, Carl, how are you?
Miss Venezuela.
Yes.
Oh, she's on fire. Oh, she's hot, hot, hot.
Yep. Hot, hot, hot.
We're stuck with Trump till death do us part, Joan. But we're not stuck with Republicans. Tomorrow is 100 days to the election.
Oh.
So it's time to get down to business. No more namby-pamby, whatever.
That's right. That's right.
We're down to it. It's time to get going.
Yep.
Shout outs to Andre and Al, because every time they call, they got some sort of eyes on the prize, election observations. Kudos to them. From last week, my friend in Arkansas used a site called swingleft.org for phone calls and letters to people. And to me, that's the mother lode, is people who didn't vote. That's a third.
Yep.
You're
that's absolutely
the mother
right.
lode. Talk to people. Find out what's on their mind.
There were something like 70 or 80 million registered Democrats who had previously recently voted who did not come out for the presidential race. And if you don't think that would have been enough to tip us into Kamala Harris territory, it's just... Oh, why would they stay home? Well, I don't really like Joe Biden, and Kamala's a lot like him, so I'm not going to vote. Really? That's helpful.
But a third of the people weren't registered to vote too. That's my big mother lode, I say. So if you want to talk it's important to talk to people, and an icebreaker is, they say, oh, how you doing? Oh, Aunt Jones got the nasal drip. Oh, she got a doctor. No. Healthcare. That's everybody knows somebody who's got a problem with the healthcare system, and the Democrats need to grab that and never let go.
Yep.
I say
healthcare, Medicare for all. Being able to feed people, being able to have an economy that affords you groceries. That's one of the things, that Steve Ratner audio that I played. If you can find it on social media, it's worth digging up because of the charts he pointed to and how manufacturing jobs and building manufacturing plants was on a strong upward trend under Biden. And then at this point, he says Donald Trump takes over, and then the line goes down. Yeah.
Yeah, the line goes up and the line goes down.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, it's 100 days tomorrow.
100 days tomorrow. We are girding our loins. We are going to be ready.
Indeed. Clank, clank, clank. My loins are girded.
Good. Mine too.
Have the very best to everybody out there.
Thank you, Carl.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Again, I'm not listening but I've got the closed captioning on with Trump, and it appears that he is saying that, Marco, Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, maybe he meant that they're ready to talk to Iran, but it seemed to me what he said was that they might be talking to Iran, which is really interesting because that isn't true. He also said, again, we've obliterated their missiles. We've obliterated their Navy. We've obliterated their military. We've obliterated them. Well, how is it that they keep attacking our bases in the Middle East? How does that happen? How are they attacking ships, the 2 ships that tried to get through the strait? How is that happening? If they have no more missiles, did they borrow the missiles from someone? Did they go to the local library and take out some missiles? Anyway, you get the idea. Let's take one more call before we go to break. Bill is on the line from Northbrook. Hey, Bill, thanks for calling back.
Hey, Joan. I just wanted to bring up maybe 3 things. 2 things. I've called maybe a month ago or whatever about the Financial Times article. I think it was March 3rd was the article in the Financial Times. Basically read like a Homeland story that the Mossad had followed the Khomeini for 2 years, blah, blah, blah. It is there. It's March 3rd. So if someone were to register, you don't have to pay. You could register. You can get to the article. That's one thing. But then again, Financial Times bringing up the issue of Iran and hitting CIA sites that were top secret sites. And then you mentioned, I guess, yesterday something about 6 people knew something. And only 6 people knew. I don't know.
There was a classified document that Trump took when he left the White House that only 6 people were cleared to see. And Jack Smith believed that he wanted to sell this information, make a little money on the side, sell some of this secret information.
That's entirely possible. That's the CIA sites that the Financial Times has brought up. And there you go. The other thing is, I bet you if you ask a lot of MAGA people who Roy Cohn is, they have no idea. But the new Roy Cohn is Stephen Miller. So, FYI, I throw that all out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for calling back, Bill. Roy Cohn was a morally bankrupt lawyer who advised Donald Trump in his young years how to exploit the legal system, about how you sue everybody, how Roy Cohn taught Trump, you never, ever say you made a mistake. Never. And, a lot of what you see in Trump's behavior and the way he interacts with the world, he learned from a guy he wildly admired, Roy Cohn. Roy Cohn there was no moral compass. There was no ethics. It was only about winning, how to game the system, how to win, how to intimidate people. You've had a bunch of electricians do the electrical work in your new building. When they send you the bill, tell them you're not going to pay it. And then, they're going to threaten to sue you, and you tell them that you're going to keep them in court until they have spent more money than the bill was. But you'll end it if they maybe give you a bill that's 15 cents on the dollar. And they go back and they look at the numbers. Do they really want to be in court for the next 2 or 3 years? And a lot of the time, most of the time, they would capitulate. Yeah, Roy Cohn, thank you very much. And Stephen Miller, I don't know if he's as smart, but he is certainly as morally challenged. He is an extraordinarily evil, and I don't use that word lightly. I don't know what broke in Stephen Miller, when it broke. I mean, I don't know, you may have seen that footage when he was in high school. I don't know, he was running for some student council office, and he went up to the microphone when they were all making their speeches, and he said some really awful, hateful things, and he was booed away from the mic in high school. Where did this guy break? What happened to him? I don't know. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with more of your texts and calls right after this.
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito. Join the conversation now at 773-763-9278.
I'm trying to use the phone.
Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
It is Friday, and we spend the first half of the show, 2 o'clock till 3:30, taking your calls and reading your texts. Let's go to Burbank, where Steve is on the line. Hey, Steve, thanks for the call today. Steve? Oh, okay. Well, then let's go to Dave from Hoffman Estates, Lady B.
Hey, Joan.
Hey, how are you?
Well, thanks. On that Falcon that you were talking about, the one that's called Tony, you should possibly get in touch with that. Remember that Chippewa poet you and Tony
Mark Turcotte, yeah.
Because they have a certain sense of these things, and you're wondering that possibly that could be Tony's spirit.
You know what? That's very interesting. Yeah, Mark Turcotte, the poet laureate of Illinois, whose probably most famous book is called Exploding Chippewas. It's a wonderful collection of poems about being a native person in a very white world.
Yeah, you maybe get in touch with him again, because they have a different sense of these things.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
of the wild and that.
I will definitely.
Anyway, just a thought. And did you see where the Dodgers went to the White House and they gave Trump a World Series ring?
I did not.
Yeah,
I did not.
Yep. Yeah, he was out behind the dais there, and geez.
Well, you got to remember, it's not that the players really make these decisions. I mean, the decision to whether or not to go to the White House is really made by the owners, and a lot of sports owners are Trumpers.
Oh, sure, but the expensive rings too. But, on a little bit more on those Canadian smokes, how soon we forget. Here in the U.S., the Trump administration has gutted our Forest Service, slashed personnel and budgets, and ordered the closure of 57 of the 77 national research labs. There goes our country's ability to keep our own forests healthy, productive, and less prone to forest fire devastation. And that what kind of set these things off. And Canada's remote boreal forests have been stressed by intense storms and shortened winters with less snowpack. At the same time, wildfires in the western U.S. are getting more frequent and deadlier, with the fire seasons getting longer and increasing in severity. And then lastly, this is real. Canadian firefighters have fought alongside our crews in California, and last week alone, a Canadian firefighting pilot crashed and died while helping in containment efforts of the Colorado wildfire.
Yep, indeed.
Do we not care? Our Canadian neighbors deserve all the assistance we can give in this time of need.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And that has always been something that's true. You know, we help them fight their wildfires, but we generally have more than they do, and they show up every time for us, every time.
Yep. And yesterday on Stephanie Miller's show, she had Malcolm Nance on. I like listening to Malcolm.
Oh, he's a doll.
And they got talking. He mentioned about Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear's waiting on. He said if he doesn't make a move already on this Mitch McConnell proof of life and let it slide past that August 4th day when Kentucky Senate rules would overtake his, that make Beshear's authority of no use. Then Beshear's rather, I should say, doesn't need to look to moving up in the party for another position. He can just join Fetterman, and they can just be banished from the herd, because that I don't know. Like I said before, they're doing like four corners. The Republicans, and how hard could it be to send somebody down into the morgue or something?
Yeah.
Or see him like in that book Coma, strung up hanging from the wires, But I mean, it'll be his own damn fault if that he just keeps twiddling his thumbs and not doing nothing.
Yeah.
and a
well, but you know, I wonder if he's afraid that if he pushes this too far, that people will get mad at him for going after somebody who has had a storied career in state politics and who is also possibly sick or in rehab. I don't know. Do you think that's part of it?
I don't know. Didn't he run for the job of governor? Sometimes you got to make a difficult decision.
Yeah,
you ain't going to please everybody all the time, you know, and that with that one voting act that, you know, Trump, they're trying to screw over women, you know, because of the last name bit. How can Melania vote? Her last name wasn't Trump as a maiden name.
Well, she under this, if that SAVE Act passes, she won't be able to vote, as I read it, because any woman that's taken their husband's name and hasn't gone back to change their birth certificate is not going to be voting.
Yep. I'll close you with this one I just read today about fearing that its new plans for the U.S. military draft pool won't work. The Selective Service System wants to create a computer simulation to test scenarios for its national mobilization. The readiness simulation project comes as the U.S. government is about to change its draft registration system. Well, the one thing they keep forgetting about it, even if it happened, Congress has to first have to update the military selective service with what specific references to the current conflict, and the president would have to sign it. You know, and they also, before they would grab these guys, they'd have to get, I'm quite sure, to go through the IRR, the individual ready reserve, the guys that had been in the military already, you know, but ain't finished their contract. And that, but because the Pentagon even said that that's a new kind of like a draft, you know, that they're already prepped with these guys. So they would get them before they'd get these young guys, and they wouldn't hit the 18-year-olds right away. They'd go from 20 all the way up to 25, then 19, and then 18, and that. So.
Where does that put Barron? Doesn't that put Barron right in the crosshairs?
He's too tall, or maybe he's too affluent or something. You know,
well, I know there was in Vietnam. I remember, I don't know whose memoir I was reading, but they were drafted for Vietnam, and they got rejected because their feet were too big. They felt that they would never have any shoes, any boots to fit this guy, and he got kicked out for big feet. I think it was some basketball player.
Yeah. Well, in Trump's case, when he beat that draft, too, you know, with the bone spurs and all of that, New York's system was next man up. And the guy that took his place, when he happened to be a son of a New York cop, and he had been in Marines, he got killed in Vietnam.
Oh.
So, anyway, let me let some others get through. But thanks, Joan, for taking the call.
Thanks, Dave. And I just want to remind everybody that we are going to, in a few minutes, we're going to take a break for news, but we are going to continue to take your calls and to read your texts after the news. We're going to do that until 3:30, and then we're going to talk to Chris Fitzsimons about the stories from the States. So this is from Cindy from Itasca. She says, Joan, totally off topic. Tariffs on forced labor, isn't that what he's done by not paying people when they are due for the labor he hired? Have a great weekend. Yeah. No, I think Donald Trump would tell you that when he screwed over people who worked on his properties, that's just good business, Cindy. No. And, yeah, the people, especially with the newest round of tariffs that we are putting on the glorious, formerly friendly state of Canada, it's crazy. And the Trump line, the White House line, is that the businesses, that somehow Canada is going to pay the tariffs. And if for some reason that doesn't happen, then the companies who are importing things from Canada, they're just going to absorb the extra cost of the tariff, which would seem to be a tax on a U.S. company. But how many companies are going to absorb an increased cost without passing it along? Bottom line is, kids, you and I, we are paying for those tariffs. And You may not have been listening. A long time ago, I interviewed Todd Maffin, who is a proud Canadian. I first started watching and listening to his posts because he was posting a lot about history, especially the history of Canada's interaction with the United States. But now, I mean, he's done so much more. He actually almost single-handedly started a Canada by Canadian movement. And there's now in grocery stores across Canada, there are maple leafs that will tell somebody that the product was made in Canada, that it was grown in Canada, that it was produced in Canada. And that has become more and more important. Both the Premier of British Columbia and the Premier of Ontario, those two big provinces, have pretty much said they want U.S. products off the shelves, and they certainly aren't going to give any U.S. companies government contracts, not unless the U.S. company has like a subsidiary in Canada or employs a lot of Canadians. They might get an exception. Yep. We're going to take a break for news. We'll be back with more after this.
You're the only voice of reason on the radio.
You give me hope.
Having listened to you every day.
Thank you for your clear insight.
Always felt a little bit smarter.
I listen to you every single day. I keep coming back to this station, and thank you for what you do.
On WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
It's time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Joan, as always, exceptional work from you from, your TV days all the way up to today. You're truly exceptional, and thanks for this great show you have.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
It is Friday. We spend the first half of the show on Friday taking your calls, reading your texts, 773-763-9278. This text came in about Iran. It's amazing how a medium-sized country can bring Trump to his knees, yet our Congress goes to the corner and fears a senile old man. If Congress grew a collective spine, this country would be in a better place. Somebody else texted in, regarding those data centers, we're all finding out they're bad for the environment, bad for global warming, and they use too much water to keep them cool. And also, I would add to that, they also make local electric rates go up. So if you live in the same section where a data center is, not only, if you're close enough to the data center, there have been reports of people opening the tap and literally almost no water comes out at all. And also people are looking at their electric bills and suddenly their electric bills are going through the roof. So they are just a gift that keeps on giving, don't you think? Now, our corrupt government, part 2. It's already come to light that the Department of Defense has been fudging the numbers of injured and killed in this Iran war. For a long time, they wouldn't release any numbers of how many people who had been injured, saying that they weren't legally required to do that. Last I heard, it was close to 500 injured. And now, apparently, they're fudging the numbers of the people who've died. There were 4 military folks who died in this Iran war during the quote-unquote ceasefire. Remember how Iran kept hitting our air bases and Donald Trump kept saying, well, that doesn't violate the ceasefire. No, that one doesn't either. That one doesn't either. None of these violate the ceasefire. Well, 4 military personnel were killed during that quote-unquote ceasefire. They have now been removed from the death rolls because, they weren't killed in the war. It wasn't the war. They were killed during the ceasefire, so it doesn't count. And as if that weren't enough, the administration is corrupt, part 3. It has been breaking this afternoon. The White House and the federal government, they're always in court because they're doing so many ridiculous things. There have been documents filed with the court by federal officials. Those documents show that grants were canceled to states that didn't vote for Trump. Federal officials said they halted billions of dollars in funding for energy projects based on whether the states backed President Trump in the 2024 election. But no, Joe Biden's too old and we don't like his position. He's not tough enough on Gaza. Let's go back to the phone lines. What do you say? Let's go to Denver, Colorado, where Kenethia is on the line. Hey, Kenethia, thanks for the call today.
Hey, Joan, I really, really enjoy your show, and I learned so much. I wanted to add that maybe Congress, the Democrats, could think about dividing themselves up into groups, you know, like work-study groups in school, and you know, those that want to investigate and set up impeachment, be in that group. And if another one wants to deal with corruption, be in that group. And, you know, on and on and on. Those that want to repair and replace, you know, departments that have been decimated, you know, be in that group. And
so
then,
that they can all put together a document called Project 2029, and each area of the government has an outline of what to do when we hit the ground running.
Right, and then, you know, the media, whoever wants to cover them, I think they should go to the ones that are doing the podcast and stuff and give them an opportunity to report on each area of the government that's doing things. And they all don't have to sit and be on one, you know, committee or one, you know, issue, you know, and let us know what's going on with each concern, you know, from the work-study group. And I think that would just be the best way to get our issues resolved, because there's so much going on. There's no way that, you know, one by one, you know, they could
It would make things a lot simpler for us, the people trying to figure things out. It definitely seems like it would be easier for us. And to some extent, you know, there are committees, and, you know, sometimes they do assign themselves to committees or groups like, you know, Brad Schneider, I believe, is a part of something called the Problem Solvers Caucus, which is supposed to be bipartisan and people who really just want to set aside politics and get things done. And then there's the Freedom Caucus, who apparently their job is to make Mike Johnson's life a living hell and make sure he doesn't get too, quote unquote, liberal. So there is some of that, but I agree with you. If it was by issue, it would make things a little more digestible and understandable for us.
Exactly. And I really, really hope that the so-called socialists, you know, that are involved now in our government can make things clear, you know, and perhaps take on, you know, what I'm suggesting, because they've got more openness, you know, to change and to creating. And I just really hope that we don't blow this, because, you know,
we can't blow it. We can't live like this any longer. No, we can't blow it.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you for letting me rant. And
you're very welcome. My pleasure.
Yeah, and we'll just vote. You know, that's all we can do. And
that's
get
right.
involved.
Yep. Thanks, Kenethia. Appreciate the call. Let us go from Denver, Colorado to Lake in the Hills. Greg is on the line. Hey, Greg, how are you?
I'm okay, Joan. How are you?
Peachy.
Good. That's what I hear you say a lot. Probably they're in season.
Sometimes I even mean it.
There you go. Nice to hear your voice live. The reason I called the first issue I had is what you were talking about at that time. You know, maybe 10 minutes ago was Mitch McConnell, the what do you call it? The questionable living Mitch McConnell.
Yeah, the mystery man.
You know, here's what I think. I mean, first of all, I mean, Andy Bashir is like you alluded to, he's a real, he appears to be, I don't know him, but he appears to be a real honest, a real good human being. And I know it would not be in his makeup to want to do something to upset the apple cart. But I think that sometimes people are holding, trying to keep their powder dry too long. And I think sometimes you just got to go out there and just say, I'm going for it. I believe this is right in my heart. I'm going to do it. And just go out and say, I'm going to call an election, and just put it out there and do it.
That certainly would make Mitch McConnell have to prove that he's alive.
Exactly. I mean, the other thing, I'll go into this other thing you were talking about earlier in the show, and that is I don't know how you say it, the parasite that's got us all concerned.
Oh, cyclospora.
Yeah, and rightfully so. I mean, but the one thing I would add to it is I know one time in my life I actually had something similar to this, and a lot of people in Illinois, you may have known some people or been affected by yourself, the Blue Brook milk incident with salmonella. And I know that I was afflicted with it because I had to go and I got a blood test for it, I believe it was. Okay, and I did have, my wife and I both had it. We drank Blue Brook milk. And, that gave us, I don't know if it was in the category of explosive, but, it was memorable, let's put it that way. And, it was probably a week before we decided to go to the doctor, but then we heard on the TV news.
Yeah. So, by the way, that reminds me, there is another salmonella outbreak, but it's mostly in the south. It's in the south, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas. They've a bunch of eggs apparently are contaminated with salmonella, which just reminded me. Anyway, thank you. Go ahead.
And here's the other thing. I think at some point, either of these illnesses or, foodborne illnesses, at some point, I think the psychosomatic, part of our brain takes over, and then you think you've got it. And, I think diarrhea is one of those things that, it's a periodic thing in most people's life, I would believe. I don't like talking about it. Nobody does, but, I think sometimes people say, oh, I've got that, and right away they say that. And the only way I think, is when you go and get tested. But I think the government could be right now, and I'm not somebody who looks on government in this way normally, but, with these guys in there, it's certainly possible, that they're looking at this like, hey, this is something we can use to, keep people's mind on other things. We're not talking about the other type of thing you can get if you're practicing unsafe sex with little girls down in, with Epstein, Yeah. So you got syphilis. A lot of people believe Trump's got syphilis. So, I mean, he's got his own problems, and but it just, I think the big thing is really, I'd like to see somebody like, what's his name, the leader of the Senate and the
John
Democratic
Thune?
side. No, well, he'll never do it because he's got too much to lose. I'd put him ahead of Andy Bashir. Why the heck doesn't that guy, get out there and say, we need Mitch to step up? This has been too many days, and we don't want to wait till this deadline. I don't know, is it a state deadline or is it a government? Government
it's the way their elections are set up. If we don't declare Mitch McConnell dead by August 3rd, they will not be allowed to hold a special election to replace him. It has to be, the seat just has to be empty until the November elections. And I don't know why that would be an advantage to the Republicans, but that's what they are accused of trying to do.
Here's another way to flush them out. My last point is you could take, George Washington Hospital? Is that the hospital?
I think that is the hospital he's supposed to be at. Yeah, that's the hospital the ambulance went to anyway. There's been some reporting, the people who are trying to tell us he's still alive. He's in rehab now. Where, when, how? That's a little fuzzy. So who knows? But that's the hospital he was taken to.
They should send him down to where Ghislaine Maxwell is, have him share a wing with her. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Goodbye.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah. We are going to take a break. We will be right back with more of your calls and texts right after this.
You're listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
We have a texter who agrees with Greg from Lake in the Hills about Mitch McConnell. Here's the text. I think the Democrats can win the House and the Senate if they're focused and get out the vote. Why aren't they trying to get that Kentucky seat of Mitch McConnell's? The governor says Mitch McConnell has passed. Lower the flags, half-mast, and place somebody in that position. Andy Beshear did say that 2 agencies, I know that's the word he used, you'd figure out what it means, 2 agencies had reached out to him to basically say Mitch McConnell is gone. But, you know, even though Andy Beshear said that, he hasn't, at least as far as I've seen, taken any action to try to force their hand. Somebody else texted in, how many Republicans who voted for Trump the second time now regret it? Well, there's a good question. My guess is, from what I've been reading, most of the people who have buyer's remorse about Trump, they are either not talking about Trump at all, or, and I've seen interviews where this has happened, people who were diehard MAGAs are now trying to say that they never supported Trump and that there's no evidence, even when there is video evidence about them attending rallies, wearing the hats, waving the flags. It's like a gaslighting thing. No, actually, no. You can say, I was a MAGA, but I wasn't. Never. And Jeff from Lyle texted in, I don't talk to my MAGA Nazi brother and sister because it's pointless. They'll never get it because they lack the mental capacity. Well, Jeff, you would be the best judge. You would be the best judge of that, I guess. And I'm very sorry for them if that's the case. Let's go back to the phone lines. Ron's on the line from Chicago. Hey, Ron.
Yes, Iran and Iraq are starting to get friendly. Do you remember Iraq? We were there 20 years.
I vaguely remember that country, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to start that again. And the price of oil is $100 a barrel right now. And if Saudi Arabia can't get their oil exported, if they're blocked, then the price is going to go up to $150 or more.
Yeah, I've heard some energy experts say that if this situation isn't resolved quickly, it would not be out of the question for a barrel of oil to hit $200.
Yeah, and J.D. Vance wanted to take his son to his golf lesson this week, and they went down. They took an Army and Marine Corps helicopter to the event. And a Secret Service agent leaked this to CNN. Now the agent is, investigated for misconduct.
Oh, yeah. I saw that on CNN yesterday. I didn't get a chance to listen to the story, that some Secret Service agent has been, put on leave and is being investigated because it's possible he leaked the vice president's travel schedule to a reporter.
Right.
Yeah, I haven't read anything more yet.
Yeah, if this was a Democrat, then Jim Jordan would start an investigation and he would file criminal charges. But no, this is a Republican, so it's...
Yep. There's a whole different set of standards for Republicans.
Yeah, and also one more thing, a little history. Back in 1930, way back when, there was a New York City judge. His name was Judge Crater.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Remember he disappeared?
Right. One day he left his courtroom and then went outside, went to a cab, and was never seen again.
Mm-hmm. Because that was before there was such a thing as a meme. There was kind of a meme, it got to be a joke. Where Judge Crater, where are you? Where's Judge Crater? I think I saw Judge Crater.
Yeah, that was a joke for years and years.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have Mitch McConnell, and maybe Mitch McConnell's in Florida rehabbing.
Yeah.
And
who knows?
And you know what they call Florida? God's waiting room.
Oh. Well, I think the demographics of Florida would bear that out.
Oh, yeah. All right.
No, dig on Florida. It's just, there's a lot of old people there. Ron, thank you so much for the call. It's always fun to talk with you. Let's go back to the phone lines. Chi-Town Dave is on the line. Hey, how are you? Oh, okay, then let's go to Paul, who's on the line from Seattle.
Hey, Joan.
Hey, Paul, how are you?
Well, I'm feeling better than Mitch McConnell is. I got to believe it. Because
You don't know that for sure. I mean, he could be feeling
Sure I
absolutely
do.
nothing at this point in time.
That's true. He probably feels nothing, and I still have the misery of life on me.
There you go.
At least I can pick up the phone and make a phone call. I think if you're in rehab, you ought to be at least able to do that and say, yeah, I'm feeling a lot better. I feel a lot better. I mean, come on. This is a pathetic lie. And I have to agree that if Andy Bashir can't force this hand, his future in politics and democratic politics is, because if nothing else, he could just spin. There's always a way to spin it that is for the best. And you can always, in this case, if you're wrong, you can say, I'm so glad I was wrong. I'm so glad that you're here.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Uh-huh.
I mean, I've never been more happy to be wrong.
Yep.
But at this point, we are depriving Thomas Massey of an opportunity to
run for that seat. Yes, and I think that's what Republicans are scared of, because Thomas Massey, Tom Tillis, John Cornyn, even Bill Cassidy in the Senate, they've been totally screwed over by Trump, and yet they still can't seem to stand up to him and stay strong against him. But Thomas Massey is a different cut. He's ready to go to the mat, and he's ready to go after that seat, and I think they are scared.
And that nobody, in the 2016 election, I was saying to everybody that this is the last of the Republicans because of the way that Donald Trump dispensed of that field of, 15 or so candidates in such a humiliating manner. All of them, he put them all down, and that basically really wiped out their bench in terms of, he ended careers of people I can't even remember their names anymore. Jeb Bush, John Kasich, all people that were really middle of the road Republicans who had a future they've never been backed. I mean, I'm sorry, the people that were willing to kiss his stinky butt like Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, I don't see them ever. I mean, Marco Rubio is another one he's stuck in the same thing of Iran is begging for peace, and it's like, well, then why are you still bombing them, and why is Trump threatening to, considering the largest attack ever on a nation that's begging for peace?
Yeah.
And by the way, if they're begging for peace, where is the surrender treaty? Right? We surrender.
Yeah. Where is that?
So that they're all stuck in this. Nobody's been willing, and I have to think that in the first term, the Republicans had 2 opportunities to be rid of him forever.
Yep.
And they just couldn't stand the impeachment.
They didn't have the stones to do it.
They don't, and it's just and then now Trump is putting on the 150-day limit on the tariffs that he was supposedly allowed to put on after the Supreme Court said no. He's re-implemented 50% tariffs on all of these countries that are. I'm sorry, that if a country is producing products with slave labor, the response is not to slap a 50%. The response is to say, no, we won't accept those products at all. Not 50%. There's not a price for human rights violations. You don't say, oh, well, 50%, okay, we can do it. It's just, and the Republicans are letting him do it, letting him raise the cost of American living, and they're just letting him do it. I don't understand these people.
I don't understand these people either. And it was one thing, most of the primaries are over, so it's too late for Trump to primary them. And they all seem to see this big, huge boulder that's going to roll over them. They all seem to know that they are going to lose their jobs, and they seem absolutely powerless to do anything about it. It is really staggering.
It's a psycho phenomenon that I didn't know existed. Well, I've been really just flabbergasted at the spineless, gutless, just weak-kneed response that organizations like law firms, universities, corporations that just, I thought these to become the head of these places, you had to have some real guts. And what I've seen is that, no, you don't.
No.
That means you have no guts.
Exactly.
You have no guts. I have more guts. And I got to tell you, and this is a shout out to my friend Chi-Town Dave. These people couldn't live our lives as blind people. They don't have the guts to live the lives that we live, of walking around unsighted. They would crumble. They would crumble. They're such weak, pathetic people. They couldn't live a life that Chi-Town Dave and I live. Every day we get up and we keep going for it, whether we can see or not. And there's a lot of things that are hard to do. These people would just crumble. What pathetic little weasels they are. And so we have to recognize that these people who think they're such big stuff are nothing when you compare to what those of us who are regular Americans, regular everyday Americans deal with. These people are nothing, and they have no business in leadership roles in this country.
Paul, it is always a delight when you call in. I love our conversations. Thank you so much. We are going to take a break and come back with more after this.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
The Stories from the States podcast comes out every week, and every week Chris Fitzsimons is here on Friday to tell us about the latest edition. Chris, how are you doing?
I am well, Joan. How about you? How has your week been?
I don't know. I don't remember. I try to forget it as soon as it happens. I find that's the best thing for my mental health. So, it's kind of like one of those things, you do it and then, you just erase your memory and you keep moving forward. You keep moving forward, Chris.
That's all we can do. The news continues to be a fire hose. That's for sure.
Yes, it does. Today's edition, the main story is something that I did not realize was happening. I mean, there have been tons of stories about how private equity buys into or takes over money-making, well-stocked, well-thought-of nursing homes, and suddenly, half the personnel are cut and degraded in credentials, and what was a great nursing home is now a terrible nursing home so they can get more profit. But I've never heard of private equity getting involved in healthcare nonprofits and hospitals too. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's our interview this week is with Anna Claire Vollers, who works with our State Line team, has been covering healthcare for many, many years, a couple decades, and she's written a lot about private equity overall. And this week we talk about the effort. I think 7 states, progressive states, blue states, were worried about private equity playing a role in healthcare, like you just described in nursing homes, buying specialties, centers, buying disability services firms, all sorts of things. And so they tried to pass laws against them. And to get around that, private equity firms are now partnering with nonprofits, because most states, especially the progressive states and the ones that have passed these laws, if you're a nonprofit, you have an obligation under your charter, under the nonprofit law, in all sorts of ways to care for the community, and you have certain obligations.
Mm-hmm.
But now these nonprofits are partnering with private equity firms who run the entire business, except for maybe the physicians or maybe some nurses. And the whole company is changed dramatically. The hospitals, the medical centers. She profiled several of them. Some of them are owned by Apollo Global Management. There's a really interesting and scary one in North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Michigan. Duke LifePoint Healthcare. When people think of Duke, you think of Duke University.
Yeah.
And Duke Healthcare is really famous. It's one of the best research hospitals in America. I think when you see that name on the side of a hospital or a healthcare facility, you think, well, this is going to be the best one in my area or this town. But Duke LifePoint Healthcare is actually 97% owned and run by a private equity firm, even though Duke's name is on the building. And they have been investigated many times. They came close to losing their Medicare funding a few years ago, a couple times, because of these horrible incidents where a man was given contrast dye for a CT scan against his doctor's orders. That led to kidney damage. Now he's on dialysis. They cited two more incidents that resulted in patient deaths. The Attorney General in North Carolina has been investigating. So there's two stories really here. It is true we've seen a lot of private equity stories, and I think for most of us, with all the news we talked about going on, the fire hose, the war, the fact that the Kennedy Center still has a tarp over it and we don't know what it's really named, and everything from the ridiculous to the disastrous and soldiers being killed and everything else. When you hear just private equity, you're, well, that's a business term. It's probably bad. It's really astonishing. It's astonishing what's happening in our healthcare facilities. I think if I went to a place and it said Duke LifePoint Healthcare, I'd be, oh, well, good. I mean, this is they're affiliated with a great research place. I wouldn't expect that the doctors are limited on, how much time they can spend, or that there's a chance there's going to be mistakes made and they're cutting corners. Private equity, I think there are occasions when private equity is helpful, but I would say from her reporting, and Anna Claire's done a lot of this reporting and others have too, when it comes into things like healthcare, it is really scary, and the consumers need to beware, which is really difficult when you're in a crisis situation. But mostly regulators and lawmakers and people who have some power have to do something. Otherwise, when healthcare is primarily about profit, even at a nonprofit, we've got big problems.
You said that you thought that there were some instances where private equity was a good thing. I got to tell you, Chris, off the top of my head, I can't really think of one, because we've seen here in Chicago, Alden Global Capital bought the Chicago Tribune, and the Chicago Tribune is a shadow of what it used to be, and et cetera, and so forth. And like I said, nursing homes, I think our former governor, Bruce Rauner, one of his hedge funds was deeply involved in nursing homes, and that kind of caused a little bit of blowback for him when he was running for governor, because guess what? I mean, when doesn't private equity, by its very nature, the whole point is we are here, you invest with us because we are going to make you a lot of money. Okay, we're going to buy this business. We need to make this, maybe this business produces $100,000 worth of profit a year. Well, we think by getting rid of half the people, by farming out a couple of the business things, that we can get that up to $400,000 a year. They gut the company. And one of the things that I've read that I hate, when they first buy a company, one of the first things they do is they sell the land that the business is sitting on, and then they force the business to start paying rent. I mean, they've got all these tricks. And eventually they dry the business up, and then they get rid of it. It's just... That's right. Well, give me an example of one instance where private equity did something good.
I can't, but it's not. I wish I had one handy, but it's it's in things that aren't as life and death, or as healthcare, or as important to our society as journalism. But I will say the other thing that I was astounded, as I've sort of been following Anna Claire's reporting and doing some reading about it. This I did not know. You probably did. You're way smarter than me. But when a private equity firm decides it's going to take over a company, it does it with, maybe 10, 20, 30% of its own money, its investors' money. It borrows the rest of the money to buy the company. And when it borrows the money and buys the company, the debt goes on the company that it buys. So like if you were buying a widget factory and you borrowed $10 million to buy it to go with your $3 million, then as soon as you buy the company has $10 million more dollars in debt. And so the debt has to be repaid. And oftentimes the private equity firm makes money off of the fees that are paid, off of the transactions that are made. It's astonishing, and there's a lot of stuff that is simple that you just explained and that I'm saying now. But the more you get into it, the fees and transactions and all the technical business stuff, all of it goes back to the private equity company, and they make money on all sorts of parts of it. And nobody really knows, and it is hard to understand the details and the machinations, and it's confusing. But why in the world do we want sometimes well-performing businesses to be bought out, and we have tax incentives to make that happen and to reward the people who do it? I mean, one of the examples in in Anna Claire's story, getting back to healthcare, at a hospice and home healthcare company, at one of them that was bought, staff had to do 13 to 15 patient visits per week, and they were driving to see people. They were doing all sorts of stuff. After private equity did it, they had to see as many as 25 people, so they could barely spend any time with people. They were told to mislead people on paperwork, mislead regulators with legal documents, all because they were forced to operate at an insane level because it was all about driving the profit, not serving the patients. Journalism is a great example. As you just mentioned, the hedge funds. It's like we're trying to wring out the profit from everything instead of work as part of I know a guy who used to run a company, and part of the company's founding documents was part of the way we measure success is if our community is succeeding. That seems to have gone by the wayside now, and it's all about let's wring every dollar we can and then sell the carcass.
Ugh. That's exactly what they do. It kind of surprises me. I mean, maybe when they get into healthcare, people will finally wake up to the dangers of this, but it shocks me that this is legal. It just doesn't seem like they're vultures. They buy something and then they suck all the life out of it and take all the profit and move on. Moving on.
Yep, move on. In fact, more than a fifth now of the private equity-backed hospitals are owned through joint ventures with nonprofits. So it's happening when you think, oh, it's a nonprofit, this won't affect me because the private equity want to buy a nonprofit. Well, they set up a for-profit and figure out a way to, like in that one example, 97% of the practice or the hospital or the facility is now private equity owned, and the nonprofit is really just a name. It's really, the employees are in some ways trying to fight back and organize, and some of them are speaking out. There are some public interest groups that are trying to point it out. But again, if things were semi-normal everywhere else, I think a lot of people would be focusing on this. But because of this fire hose and the insane news we have I was going to say every day, but every 2 hours, this just continues, and it erodes these fundamental institutions that serve our communities.
Yep, it absolutely does. We need to take a break. I'm talking to Chris Fitzsimon. The podcast is Stories from the States. It comes out every week. We're going to talk more when we get right back after this.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
Hey, it's Joan Esposito, and I want to tell you about 120 Life. 120 Life is a drink made with ingredients that help support healthy blood pressure. My mom struggled with high blood pressure for much of her adult life. For many of us, high blood pressure runs in the family. 120 Life is a great tasting fruit and vegetable drink designed to improve your blood pressure. Put it to the test for a couple of weeks. Check your blood pressure, see if it works for you. Some people have reported results in as little as 2 weeks. And it's great. I enjoy it because I love a fruit drink that isn't overly sugary. To try it, go online, 120life.com. That's 120life.com. If your high blood pressure doesn't come down in a couple of weeks, you can get a full refund. And you can get a 20% discount. Use the code JOAN, JOAN, for 20% off your order. These statements have not been approved by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I'm joined by Chris Fitzsimon. You can hear him on the Stories from the States podcast, which is an effort put out by the States Newsroom. That's an organization that has reporters in state houses across the country to keep an eye on exactly what legislation is being proposed, what legislation is being passed, and how it affects us. Chris, there are some other things that I want to share with you. Mallory, who I know you work with, sent me a video that shows, or you can hear, an Alaskan state legislator chasing a black bear. I got to tell you, at first I thought, well, he's being mean. He's yelling at the bear, but apparently he chased it off because there was somebody's dog was getting ready to go up to the black bear. Are you guys posting this video somewhere where the rest of the folks can see it?
Yeah, if you go to alaskabeacon.com, that's our amazing outlet there. We have people in Juneau, the capital, and Anchorage. And you go, I think it was posted July 17th. If you just go to Alaska Beacon, you'll find it under Alaska in Brief, a state legislator chasing a bear away from a fellow lawmaker. What happened was a fellow Julie Colomb, a Republican lawmaker from Anchorage, was leaving the Alaska State Capitol during a late night meeting, and she was walking toward the home to apartments that aren't too far away when a bear was walking up to her. So another lawmaker just happened to be getting to a rideshare, I guess an Uber, saw it, got out of the car, and sort of made himself really big and sort of went over to the bear and tried to scare the bear away, and had his cell phone there and recorded it.
As one does.
And posted the video on social media. And somebody here described it as the most Alaska thing they had ever heard. So,
yeah, it does seem like something that a man, was he wearing a flannel shirt at the same time and maybe lumberjack boots? But yeah, and he seems to be enjoying himself immensely. It's not like he's scared. He seems to think that this is quite entertaining.
Yep, and the other legislator, Representative Colomb, said the bear was trotting toward her before the guy got out of the Uber or the rideshare and started filming it to chase it away. And she said she thought she'd have to run back into the Capitol because she didn't know what to do. Mm-hmm. So you never know in Alaska, just walking down the streets of the Capitol after a meeting, you not only have to deal with occasionally reporters or other lawmakers, there are big bears trying to see what's going on.
But he was a Republican and she was a Republican. Would he have shooed the bear away had it been a Democrat? Maybe he would have just left the bear alone.
You never know. You never know. I'd like to think that he's a trained bear person, but who knows?
Yes, I will step back, everyone. I am a trained bear professional. Don't try this at home.
That's right.
On a more serious note, you've also been reporting on a political drama in New Orleans. Tell us about that.
I mean, that is one of the craziest stories that everybody's involved. There's a judge involved. There's the governor has got involved. The lieutenant governor's involved, and they're all fighting each other about what a local prosecutor did. It's another one. It's one of these crazy. New Orleans stories, and the bottom line is that you've probably seen this. The governor is really mad at New Orleans because that's where all the liberals live, and the Governor Landry, of course, he's not only the governor of Louisiana, he's also Trump's emissary to figure out what to do in Greenland. I don't know if you remember that, and I don't know and he's been to Greenland a couple of times. So why would the governor of Louisiana have anything to do with Greenland? I have no idea. So anyway, Louisiana is they finally, I think, calmed down, but it's basically it started out as a New Orleans situation, which then went to the lieutenant governor, and now the governors got involved. They thought they were going to indict a prosecutor, and then anyway, I don't know which is crazier, that story or the bear.
Yeah, really, and I didn't realize. Because I think of Louisiana as just red as red can be. Also, by the way, one of the states that's having a measles outbreak, just, aside, FYI, tangential. But I didn't realize, and I guess I should have, because a lot of urban areas where the people are, I think a little more sophisticated, a little more well-read, they tend to be more democratic.
Yeah, I think one of the craziest. I mean, we've had a bunch of stories in the last couple days about the measles. I think there are more measles cases this year. It's a 35-year high. 90%, as you'd expect, are among unvaccinated people. Many of them, young people. It's really, I mean, we know where all that's coming from. It's the whole vaccine skepticism or vaccine denial. It feels like part of our society is determined to bring back a very serious disease that we thought we had all but eradicated, and now here it comes because of crazy, fear of science or denial of science, starting with the Secretary of Health and Human Services.
Especially in Republican states, they've rolled back or done away with vaccine requirements. I mean, it used to be that you couldn't go to school. You had to submit your vaccine record because they didn't want you, getting sick and making anybody else sick, and that was a requirement. And now it's like, oh, well, we're going to get rid of the requirement because that's something parents should decide. No, it's not something parents should decide. It's something that they should be required to do because it's necessary to prevent outbreaks like this. I mean, I'm especially mad about this because I hate to tell you how old I am, but I remember getting the polio vaccine where everybody went to the neighborhood community center and you lined up and you got this little white cup. It had sugar cubes or I don't forget what it was in it. And I, as a child, I had measles, I had mumps, I had chicken pox, and now there are vaccines for all of these things. And I don't understand why, people are so afraid about this and think that somehow what really makes me mad are the parents who count on all the other parents to get their kids vaccinated. So basically nobody will be bringing measles into the classroom and they can have the best of both worlds, which is just selfish beyond belief.
Yeah, I think the fact that we're having a lot of people get sick, we're having a lot of kids who are now getting measles and we thought we had eradicated it is bad enough. But the whole push by RFK Jr. and the Trump administration to sow doubt on the mRNA technology that created the COVID vaccine, there are tons of scientists that will tell you that is going to set us back in cancer research, all sorts of the progress that we were making. And I think that'll be one of the saddest, in some ways, legacies of this era. And we won't even really, it's going to be hard to measure because what could we have cured? What could we have stopped this? What sort of suffering could we have stopped in the future if we hadn't been so insane and had all these conspiracy theories about a technology that was literally developed to save people's lives and prevent them from getting sick? It's just astonishing.
And what I think is, and maybe this is just my opinion, but what I think is really disgusting about all of it is I don't even necessarily think that deep down inside RFK Jr. believes any of this. He was a nowhere. He was a zero in the Kennedy family. He was a disaster. And remember, he used to be for the environment. I mean, he was a real pro global, get rid of global warming guy. And I think when he got on this anti-vax bandwagon, suddenly he was in the limelight. The rest of his family be damned. He was in the limelight now. And I really, if you had to put him under oath, maybe set up a polygraph, I don't think he believes half of what he's talking about. I really don't.
I don't either, but I don't think I would want to do that because then we'd have to ask him about all these dead animals that he keeps
Speaking of bears, yeah, I mean, the guy in Alaska shooted off. Kennedy did he actually hit the bear with his car or did he find it dead before he dragged it into the woods so he could come back for it later?
Yeah, I can't remember, but he did that. I think he saw it get hit. I think if I remember in the story right, that he saw it get hit and then he pulled it into his vehicle and he was going to try to take it home. I mean, it's just the craziest. And then there's been a couple other just bizarre animal stories.
He cut up a shark.
Yep.
Oh my God.
I don't even understand some of these stories. If you submitted them to Netflix for a science fiction movie, they'd reject the plot for being unrealistic.
They'd say this is absurd. This is unbelievable.
Right.
I mean, it might be science fiction, but it's too crazy. It's too far out there. Yeah, it's going to be a government official. Only he does this. He puts a bear on his car. He cuts open a shark that's on. No, I'm sorry. This pitch is over. Get out of here.
He cut the head of the shark off with the dead shark with a chainsaw, and then tied it to the roof of his family van with bungee cords. Apparently, so we got that going for us.
Oh, you want to laugh, but then you take a step back. And you look at the big picture and all the damage this guy is doing, and then you want to cry.
And the saddest thing, I know we're running out of time, the saddest thing to me is that there was a kernel of truth, his talk about processed foods and reliance on chemicals in foods, and that's the one thing the Trump administration has not done. They took the crazy parts, or it feels like they're taking some of the anti-science parts, and then the stuff that he had that I think got somehow some people to believe in him. I mean, crazy as that sounds, but the Trump administration just had that executive order about the chemical that Monsanto makes in Roundup.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't taken on a lot of these food
safe
additives.
now. Didn't you hear that? Roundup
That's
is safe.
right.
Roundup doesn't cause cancer
and Robert F.
anymore.
Kennedy doesn't think that. That's one of the few things he's not gotten done.
So the things that actually would help us, he can't seem to get anywhere with, but the craziness, that's been embraced wholeheartedly. Oh, that makes sense.
Right. That's right. It is scary.
Chris, I look forward to our chat next week.
Me too.
Stories from the States is where you can get that wherever you get your podcasts, okay? Stories from the States. It is put out by States Newsroom, which is a wonderful organization that has reporters in every state legislature in the United States so that we can make sure that we know what kind of craziness is coming down the pike, or maybe once in a while something good that's coming down the pike. Chris Fitzsimon, thank you.
Thank you. Stay away from the Bears.
Yes, no Bears, except Chicago Bears, maybe. We are going to take a break for news. We'll be back with more after this.
Remember when you get to work to hop over to WCPT820.com or the TuneIn Radio app and stream The Stephanie Miller Show. Weekdays 8 to 11 a.m. on Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter. Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive.
Quite frankly, I get most of my news from you.
Joan Esposito.
Y'all ready for this?
On WCPT 820.
It is a delight to welcome back retired Major General Randy Manner to our airwaves. First of all, are you having a good summer, Randy?
It's a great summer, personally.
Wow, man, that's the best response I've gotten all week. Okay. I'm glad somebody's having the time of their life. And I suppose we have to talk about, first of all, the one thing that I want to ask you about before we get to other stuff about Iran is this idea that they are changing the statistics. They don't want to talk about how many military people have been injured, and they are playing fast and loose with the number of people killed. It seems that is unprecedented, but maybe I'm wrong.
That is totally unprecedented. The Trump administration is lying to the American people. It's actually, I'm at a loss for words here, because I was going to use the word I'm shocked. But the reality is I'm not shocked about this administration's complete disdain and unconcern, no concern whatsoever for our military and for our family members. To literally say, oh, it's not really 18, it's 14 because those 4 don't count. It's like, what the hell are we talking about here?
Mm-hmm. They died in the Middle East and there was, military action, but we were in a ceasefire. That's why they don't count. It was a ceasefire. Apparently you can't die if there's a ceasefire.
Well, apparently, for political reasons, you're not allowed to count those people that were killed and or wounded. And that is an insult to every American military member, every veteran, and most importantly, to every single family member who now sees that their loved ones' lives do not mean anything to this president and this administration because they are playing with propaganda. And that is just wrong.
And when Hegseth sat before a Senate committee, he couldn't give the senators a clear answer as to what goal will mean the war is over. What is the thing that we're working toward? And he couldn't answer them. It is and I don't know if you heard the report that was on it was on social media. A news guy on social media said that earlier this week Trump was in the Oval Office and he was, quote unquote, having a meltdown, yelling, cursing, because he doesn't know how to end the Iran war. He can't seem to end the Iran war, and he knows what a disaster it is. I don't think I don't think he's got what it takes to figure out how to end the Iran war, unless he does what he did before, just stand up and say, okay, we won, and walk away.
Well, obviously, I have no firsthand knowledge of what the president did or didn't do, although it's believable. However, the Secretary of Defense's comments in the hearing today is on video, and we can all watch it, whether we want to or not, so to speak. But it is basically just, it's absolutely just, it shows the lack of experience, the ineptitude, the stupidity, the lack of strategic thinking of a Secretary of Defense who responds to every question from Democratic senators by saying, you have Trump derangement syndrome. I mean, name calling. And also, by the way, says your lack of support of the budget means you don't support our troops. Those are all lies. This is all about, I mean, he believes they're true, the Secretary of Defense. The reality is, as the one senator said today, hey, Secretary, Mr. Secretary, the problem is you are a failure. You are a bad leader. It is not the young men and women that are on the battlefield and their families. We support them wholeheartedly. And let's not mix the two up here. Your incompetence is killing Americans and causing every single American to pay more money at the food store and at the gas pump. And it is because of that that I'm calling you on this, not because I'm going to say anything negative whatsoever for our military. And it's just absolutely total incompetence. And it's a guy who knows nothing more than to be a Fox show host, ranting and raving the way that he always does, rather than trying to understand what are the strategic national security policies, procedures, and strategy to be able to end this war. He doesn't have the ability to do it, and the people he surrounds himself with do not either.
And because Donald Trump has purged a lot of our career diplomats and people who used to advise on the Middle East and foreign affairs, there's nobody coming to his aid. When you surround yourself with imbeciles, you're maybe guaranteeing their loyalty to you, but when you actually need expertise, there's nobody there that can help you because, again, they're imbeciles. So it doesn't surprise me that he doesn't know how to end the war. He's not getting any advice from anybody who knows anything.
So the number one trait that all of Trump's advisors and cabinet members must have is unwavering loyalty to the great leader. That is it. Competence in the area of their department and their role and responsibility is absolutely not a criteria, and it's evidenced by every single person that the Republican Senate confirmed. It's a travesty. And again, it's reflected by the fact that this president doesn't want to hear competent advice and counsel because he doesn't even know or understand or doesn't even feel he needs it. Because remember, he's the smartest guy on the planet.
Yep.
And he's the best soccer athlete, by the way, too, apparently.
Oh, no.
Anyway.
Well, yeah. I mean, remember when he said that he was smarter than all the generals? That's why he didn't need them in his administration anymore? He's smarter than the generals.
Yes. Well, he's smarter than everybody by his own phraseology. I mean, his own quotes. And again, I think it's really important that we also take a look at this Secretary of the Defense who thinks like a very junior military leader about, oh, you know, let's make sure to have a good haircut and let's raise the physical fitness standards. And by the way, because I must suffer from it myself, meaning testosterone in his case, we're going to test every single male over the age of 30.
Are you telling me, Randy, that hasn't been regularly done? We don't know the testosterone levels of all of our assumingly male military members? I mean, you know, low T could be a serious problem.
Clearly, that is a national defense issue. Well, obviously, it's not, in case anybody's trying to quote me, it's not a national security issue. It is just something where this incompetent Secretary of Defense is trying to focus on crap that has to do with nothing about the ability of our military to deliver on their military skill sets. It's not a factor. And again, even retired military doctors are saying, WTF, this makes no sense whatsoever. And in fact, it could have significant implications, not only for screening, but also for treatment for people who do not need it.
Yeah. And there was a court that wanted to investigate this, because apparently if you don't want any kind of hormone treatment for your military members who might be trans, then it's how do you justify hormone treatment for the rest of the military members? Like this, you can't sort of ban hormone treatment and then say, oh, yeah, we want it. We just don't want it for you. And there is a federal judge that is looking into this apparent discrepancy.
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. Remember, this administration does what it wants to whomever it wants to. It fires African Americans. It fires women from the military. It does not. It basically rewrites history to I'll use the phrase appropriately, whitewash history, such that America can do nothing bad whatsoever. Yet we all know there's a lot of great, wonderful things about this government. I'm sorry, excuse me, about this country. And there's some things that, I hope that we learn from. But right now we're not learning the lessons, and we're not trying to be a better nation at the top, literally from the president at this time. We cannot look to him to represent the values of America. We are not fascists. We are not a government that ignores those people who may need a helping hand from time to time. We want people to be safe. We want people to be in a better situation with education. Yet at the same time, he cuts the Department of Education, he cuts Medicaid, he cuts so many of the, quite frankly, safety net issues. Remember, we have 101 days until everything changes. And I will tell you, this next 101 days is going to be very, very dangerous, because this president is trying to stop or to curtail or influence voting across the United States. 101 days, count it down. And if your state, like right now in Virginia, we can vote. So you know what? Get out there and vote. Get out there and vote and get people to the polls.
Yeah, there's also an article that's on the homepage of the New York Times. Trump meets with cabinet over whether to intensify Iran strikes. And I just think, is it the woman from the, Linda McMahon from the, the martial arts company? Is it Kelly Loeffler, who's never done anything in her life except be part owner of a women's basketball team? Which are the cabinet members who are going to give him really good advice? I'm curious.
None. He has no one competent in his entire cabinet. And in fact, he actually have people who are benefiting monetarily by tens, hundreds of millions of dollars. And the president himself, this is not me saying this, you can just do some research, over $1 billion in profits to him alone as a result of his investments and decisions that he has made. He has personally benefited in the past year.
I'm talking to retired Major General Randy Manner. You talked about money. When we come back after a break, we've been getting testimony recently and reporting before that about the costs of this Iran war, billions and billions and billions of dollars. I want to talk to you first of all, what goes into that figure? What are we looking at this money being paid for? And also, does it seem whether the costs have gone up surprisingly since the last time we exercised our military like this? I'm talking again to retired Major General Randy Manner. We're going to be right back with more after this.
Because facts matter. You are listening to WCPT 820.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Every weekday afternoon from 2 to 5 p.m. on WCPT 820.
Joining me is retired Major General Randy Manner. And we just saw Pete Hegseth and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, go before the Congress of the United States and say, we need billions more dollars for the Iran war. At one point, when it first started, the estimate was that we were spending $80 billion like every week. Why is that? It seemed to me that I don't recall wars, even recent ones, running up those kinds of bills. Have I just not been paying attention to Randy? Is this the norm?
Okay, so it's a great question. This war has been far more expensive over a shorter period of time because of the munitions that have been used. We've expended hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, many hundreds, billions of dollars of weapons because they're very expensive. We're not talking about using $50,000 drones. So you think about a Tomahawk missiles, 2.6 million, one of them, a Patriot missile, 5 million for one, and a THAAD, 12 million for one. So when you start talking about those kind of numbers, it starts to add up very fast. So that is one component that is different. Now, I know it's going to sound a little bit like we shot ourselves in the foot, which we did, but fuel costs have risen because of the war, and fuel costs are a significant component of any large operation like this because you have aircraft flying 24/7, you have ships that are constantly deployed, you have helicopters, you've got vehicles, tremendous amount of energy to be able to power in order to run all of this equipment. You have obviously those special, you have to feed everybody and forward deploy it. You have to forward deploy maintenance and mechanics and contractors to be able to support that equipment. Combat pay, and also, of course, the destruction. I don't even know if the destruction of all of our equipment has even been included in this yet. So, in my opinion, my professional opinion, the amounts that were put to Congress by the Secretary of Defense are probably half of what it actually is costing.
Oh my God.
There's no way that amount, I'm not talking about the $1.5 trillion budget. I'm talking about the cost of the war.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's more like between 80 to $110 billion so far. And I base that obviously based on my own analysis combined with the readings of various analysts that do literally all the weapon counting and everything else. So I think it was understated grossly. I think they continue to lie to Congress and to the American people the same way that they basically said, as we said earlier, those 4 Americans that were killed in the past week or two, they really don't count. Like,
yeah.
What the hell are they thinking?
Mm-hmm. Randy, we've talked about how one of the problems is we've used up a lot of our munitions, and our munitions are not quick to replace. We're using, multi-million-dollar missiles to take out $60,000 drones. I know that the military does all these exercises all the time. Did somebody forget to say, oh, by the way, the next kind of warfare might be drone warfare. Maybe we should really be putting a lot of money in this, because it doesn't seem like that was the case.
So I think that's a very, very fair criticism. I completely understand there is an inertia in the Pentagon. When I say inertia, there's different programs and projects that they can take anywhere between 10 to 15 years from the first time that you come up with it until the time that the actual weapon or ship or whatever is actually launched or in the hands of soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. It can take a long time. What that translates to is we're not agile enough. As the United States is not agile enough. Our military, and I'm saying this of the senior leaders, not the young men and women on the ground, the decision makers, were not agile enough. This is a long-term problem, by the way. If you remember, even President Truman talked about the dangers of the defense industrial complex, that they almost drive the train about what the military should invest in. This is a systemic challenge. That's why Ukraine is the world's best fighters right now about both the use of drones, the manufacture, the training, the use of drones, counter-drone warfare. They are the best in the world. I would estimate they're probably 4 years ahead of the United States military right now, because everything we do takes so darn long to think it through, turn it into reality, and move. But when you are Ukraine and you're fighting for your survival, you adapt much more rapidly, and you don't have much money, so you got to make every dollar count.
Yeah, it does seem like you would want your military to be nimble, and having a bunch of low-cost drones certainly seems to be working out beautifully for Ukraine. That, they've taken the fight to Crimea. I was reading an article, or it was a post on social media about how, maybe there'll be more pressure on Putin now that the middle class in Russia is being inconvenienced. They can no longer feel safe vacationing in Crimea. And the Ukraine blew up a bunch of warehouses where it's like their equivalent of Amazon. So all the fashion and all the stuff that the middle class used to order, they can't get it anymore. But I don't know who is deciding where the drones should go next. But so far, I have to say, I think it's brilliant. What do you think?
The Ukrainian leadership is doing, and the soldiers there and the people are doing an incredible job. I mean, an incredible job of having resisted one of the largest militaries in that part of the world. It is astounding what they have done, obviously with a lot of help. But the reality is, it's Ukrainian men and women that are dying every day in defense of their homeland, and we should support them. I just think that the American military absolutely must learn from them. It's funny how the administration rejected the Zelensky's offer early in the war to offer help about the employment and of drones and and how to be able to counteract them. I need to also say that this probably is going to continue to escalate. Unfortunately, I truly believe. Remember, the Iranians, despite the propaganda of the president, the Iranians have a significant military offensive capability, and they have been holding back from actually attacking American barracks and American facilities in Kuwait and other locations. If you notice from the aerial views, there's one crater on a warehouse, one crater on a building. That's because the Iranians are receiving targeting information from China and or Russia, despite what the president says that he believes them, they're not providing anything. I don't believe that for a second. They are providing it. The Iranians do not have the ability in-house to be able to do all of that specific targeting. And lastly, of course, I say again to all your listeners, this is not getting bad yet because the Iranians have held back on attacking American troop locations. They have been trying to minimize casualties, but if things go bad, they can do it. And I want to make sure also your listeners understand it is 100% propaganda about the idea that the Iranians have a nuclear weapon. That is a lie of this administration. And they only have the ability to enrich uranium at a very low level now. They're nowhere near building a weapon, and we need to know that there are no facts that the administration has shown to the contrary. Nothing.
Randy, I haven't heard anybody express that before, that Iran is actually holding back. I haven't read that. I haven't heard that. But that is terrifying. That is absolutely terrifying. And, because Donald Trump right now is talking about, they've got a couple of choices, they can sit down and talk with us, or we can pretty much, blow them to kingdom come. And that's terrifying to me that we haven't seen them at their best.
No, they have been trying to avoid large-scale casualties of American servicemen and women because they know that this president will come on even stronger. But the reality is it can be done, and its evidence is by the fact that they have so carefully been able to hit specific targets in Bahrain and Kuwait and in Saudi Arabia at U.S. bases. That is not like luck. Oh, they hit that AWACS aircraft over $1 billion by itself. They hit it accidentally? No, they didn't hit it accidentally. That was extremely targeted.
Wow. Good grief. And real quickly, there's a lot of worry that what Donald Trump will try to do to disrupt the midterm elections. Whether or not he sends ICE to polling places, we can only speculate. But could the National Guard be sent to polling places? They couldn't, could they?
Okay, so by law, the military, and to include the National Guard, are prohibited from being near polling places. However, we've already seen this president use the National Guard illegally and inappropriately and has been stopped by court action over and over again. And of course, I even give the example of your courageous governor there in Illinois and other governors who have resisted and said, hell no, that's not happening in my state. Yes, Republican governors could theoretically, even though it's illegal, they could deploy their own National Guard or under the direction of the president to seize ballot boxes or to, quote unquote, hang around the polling place to ensure security. There's so much crap going on. This is the way Russia does elections, not the United States. And we should resist this at every single way.
Former retired Major General Randy Manner, it is always a pleasure and educational to talk with you. Thank you so much for being here today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
We are going to take a break. We're going to be back with more after this.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
A little bit earlier today, well, actually at the beginning of the show today, I told you that the peregrine falcon Josephine, who's been living on the University of Illinois West Campus, has now found a mate. Her mate is a peregrine falcon named Tony, after our good friend, actor, artist, and poet, Tony Fitzpatrick. Tony is the one who introduced me to Mark Turcott, who we just talked to last week. He is the poet laureate of the state of Illinois and a delightful human being. And another poet laureate was recommended to me by a friend whose judgment on authors who are interesting I trust very much. He said that I should try to talk to Jennifer Militello, who is the poet laureate for the state of New Hampshire. Jennifer is here and joins us now. Jennifer, thank you so much for doing this.
Joan, thank you so much for having me on. It's such an honor to be with you.
So as a poet laureate of the state of New Hampshire, have you been doing a lot of radio?
I am so busy doing all sorts of things. It's such an exciting position. So yes, some radio, some high school visits, some poetry festivals, just such a great array of things.
When I talked to Mark Turcott, and I said, is there a committee that tells you what to do or gives you a travel schedule? He said, no. He said, the rules for how to be the poet laureate are different in every state. He said, but here in Illinois, they kind of just let me do whatever I want. And so he's organizing all these readings and festivals and that kind of thing. How does the poet laureate process work in New Hampshire?
Yeah, it's really similar in New Hampshire. So there is just a sense that you are given free rein, that you are a representative of poetry for the state, which is just so beautiful and so exciting. So I'm doing a lot of similar things. I'm organizing poetry events. I'm visiting places. One of the things I really love is that I get to visit a lot of places that don't ordinarily see poets. So I get to be that person, for example, who allows a group of high school students to say, wow, there are real poets in the world, and this is what they look like, and this is what they sound like. So it's absolutely thrilling.
I don't know if you have ever met Mark Smith. He is he's the guy who pretty much invented the idea of the Poetry Slam, which started, of course, at a wonderful dive bar here in Chicago, where we like to start a lot of good artistic ideas. And I think that the slam movement, first of all, it's exploded. There's so much spoken poetry now. And I also think it's sort of reinvigorated the medium. I mean, I've always loved poetry, but I must admit, most of the people I've mentioned that to in the past have sort of looked askance at me, like there might be something a little off about me, that I loved poetry so much. And now, I don't know what you think. It seems like poetry's hip.
That is absolutely true, Joan. It's really just so exciting. I agree with you that spoken word poetry and slam poetry has reinvigorated the art form. Here in New Hampshire, we have Slam Free or Die, which is a
Ooh.
really lively, yes, a really lively slam community, which I have joined for some readings and for some judging. It's a little wild. It's a little unruly in the best way. But I think it really gets to the heart of what we come to poetry for, right? I mean, Flannery O'Connor said she writes to find out what she knows. I always sort of think about it as maybe I come to poetry to find out what I feel. And I think things like slam poetry remind us that poetry is about each of us. We don't want people to think it's difficult. We don't want people to look askance. No one is writing poetry to make themselves look smarter than anyone else. We all just want everybody to connect with their experience.
I read that you have what's being called a hybrid collection coming out in 2026, and it's titled Identifying the Pathogen. First of all, what is a hybrid collection?
So a hybrid collection, and that book has just come out, so it is in the world currently. A hybrid collection is a mix of different genres. So it is a book that blends poetry with a little bit of kind of fiction, with a little bit of nonfiction, and also with some research. So one of the threads that moves through the book is the story of Anna Morandi Manzolini, who's an 18th century Italian artist and anatomist. So it also tells her story, has some quotes from her journal. So just kind of a mix of a whole bunch of interesting stuff and kind of defying the constraints of genre.
Interesting. Is it like a collection of poems and essays, or poems and short stories?
Yeah, so I think the way I would describe it, there are definitely some essays in there, but there are also some prose poems that kind of tell a story. So they get to be fiction and poetry sort of at the same time. So all of the poems are in blocks of text, though I would consider them poems because the language is very poetic. And then there are these segments about Anna Morandi Manzolini's life, and again, those quotes from her journal. So just a great mix.
When I've been to slams, obviously people usually get up there and only do one poem, but it seems to me that the poems that are performed come out of a personal experience or a personal trauma, or it is something very, very related to their own life. Is that your experience with slam poetry?
Absolutely. I think, slam poetry is a really great option also because I think the communities are really tight-knit and supportive. So it is a place where people feel comfortable expressing their trauma. Because it's happening in real time, it's a little bit different, right? I think it has the same goals of connection, and seeing yourself in other people, sharing your experiences with other people as poems that happen on the page. But because you're reading poems on the page, often in isolation, that experience isn't as immediate in its sharing, in its connection, in its energy. And so I definitely think that slam poetry provides the forum for that sharing and for that connection and for that support.
What adjectives would you use to describe your poetry?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think my poetry hopefully is pretty raw. I like to think of it as something that is pretty immediate. Also, I really love images, so I would think of it as something that's kind of visual or imagistic, and probably pretty descriptive. So there are poets who write story-based poems or poems that describe events. For me, my poems are a little bit more based in the immediacy of emotion and of the image and of description.
Interesting. Other than poetry journals, chapbooks, or books, the only place I know that regularly publishes poetry is The New Yorker. Is poetry for most of the public, is it is it waning or waxing?
Yeah, that's a terrific question. There are some other kind of larger forums, The Nation, The New Republic, these terrific kind of larger circulation magazines do have poetry, published in their pages. I think poetry waxes and wanes. I think everyone is always saying poetry is dead or poetry is dying. One of the great things about being laureate, and one of the things that really surprised me, is that I found out that poetry, at least in New Hampshire, is really alive and well. People love poems. People want to write poems. People want to read poems. There are a lot of YA books that are sort of novels in verse that young kids are reading and that are really invested in. I thought I was going to go into this laureate position and experience exactly what you're kind of talking about. But I'm teaching workshops that are full of people. Occasionally, I have a poetry salon where we just sit, run by some organizations in the state, and we talk about poetry and share some poems. Those are always full. And again, schools also really love having a poet come. And when students are given the opportunity, these young people, to sort of remember what poetry is, find out for the first time, they really are engaged with it. And also, a lot of times they're already familiar with it. They're already writing it. They're already reading it. So, now, a few years ago, before I was laureate, I would have questioned whether poetry was dying or dead. Now I tend to think it's really alive and thriving somewhere in the background.
When you do speak to students, do you try to give them guidelines for how to write a poem? Or would that be wrong? They should just do whatever feels right.
Yeah, so I think the thing that I tell them first and foremost is to write without fear, to write what feels natural to them. A lot of times, what I tell them to do is to give themselves timed increments where they don't let that editor or that sort of judge that they have in their minds come into the mix. So as long as they're writing, I'm like, write for 5 minutes. Just write one memory, write one impression, describe something you saw today. That's the raw part of the writing, just getting it on the page, putting the words out there. And then the next stage, I tell them, is to shape the poems. And that's when you make decisions. Where is the first line of this poem? Where do I want this reader to enter in? How do I choose words that are the best, most specific, most alive words? Because poems are like concentrated entities, right? I always think of them as like the can of orange juice before you add the water. They are so dense. They are so, closely knit. You have such a short space for such a bunch of explosive emotion. So then when they are past that raw writing stage, how can you pack as much power into this small space that you have?
Interesting. Jennifer, we need to take a break. I'm talking with Jennifer Militello, the Poet Laureate of the state of New Hampshire. We're going to be back with more after this.
Hey, Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive talk from TuneIn.
Hey, do you want to buy a home? Or maybe you want to refinance a home? Or maybe one of your family members has died and left you a home? That can be complicated. If you want to buy a home from the estate of a deceased family member, Team Hochberg can help you with that. And remember, they have nearly 800 5-star Google reviews. Cindy and her sister inherited their mom's home when she died. Cindy had already been living there because she was her mom's caregiver. She wanted to buy the home, so she called Team Hochberg for a consultation for free. David helped Cindy get a mortgage to buy the home from her mom's estate. That also allowed her sister to get her share of the equity. David helped Cindy get a mortgage so she could buy her mom's home and so her sister could cash out. death can be overwhelming. If you are trying to figure out estates and properties and who can buy what and who needs to get paid, call Team Hochberg. They know all that stuff. 855-563-2843 or go online, 56david.com. Team Hochberg has helped me refinance a couple of times, and they've helped thousands of our listeners, but you have to make that call. 855-563-2843 or online, 56david.com. ACM Equal Housing Lender, NMLS 643114.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
And I am talking with Jennifer Militello, who is the Poet Laureate of the state of New Hampshire. Jennifer, I know you've got several books out in addition to Identifying the Pathogen. You've also got a memoir, Knock Wood. You have poetry collections out. The Pact is one of them. Would you mind reading us maybe a little bit of one of your poems?
Yeah, I would love to read, maybe I'll read a newer poem. This is a poem that appeared in The Nation in 2020, just before the pandemic hit. And it's a poem that addresses the kind of extreme, purposeful polarization we're experiencing as a country by addressing, I know your listeners know this well, what an opinion looks like, and it's called Opinion. It was a lean-to one could live in so long as it never rained. It was a grain of salt close up, looking like a crystal, growing from itself like an outcrop of land. It was a sail opened in a storm, a memory lost, a coin tossed at the wrong time, declaring heads or tails. It had the air of an aristocrat or the stench of a skunk. No matter who bred it, it couldn't be fair. It wasn't a buoy. It kept no one up. It had the metallic notice of a gong. It was a thoroughbred race too soon, or a setting moon, or a button lost or undone. It only had one track, and when it sped up, it was sure to derail. It had a smile for a satellite, or a smirk for a sun. Everyone thought they recognized its face, but one by one, they were wrong.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. It is always wonderful. You know, I read poetry a lot, but when I've talked with poets and heard them actually read their own poetry out loud, it takes on a whole different kind of character than when you just read it in your head. That is absolutely wonderful. Is that in the new book?
It actually isn't out in a book yet, so it is available.
So we have to go back to The Nation in 2020.
Yep, it is available online, but it's not currently in a book. Yep.
Do you have a favorite poem? I would imagine they're like your children, and it's hard to pick one that you like best, or maybe a favorite book that you've put out.
Yeah, that is a terrific question. I think I often feel like my newest poems are the best poems because I am always evolving. This is also one of the exciting things about being someone who does creativity for a living. There's just a constant evolution, a constant learning, a constant changing. So I feel like I'm always sort of meeting goals for my poems in different ways. And I always feel like the latest poems in some way are doing that the most successfully. So hopefully I'm just getting better and better.
Well, that's what we all hope. When you write a poem,
Absolutely.
do you, how many times do you edit it, or does it depend on the poem?
Yes. So most poems I edit severely over months and months and months of time. So most poems, I write them, I rewrite them, I cut them apart, I rearrange them. Every once in a while, there is a little gift of a poem that comes out almost completely intact in the way that it's meant to emerge. But most of the time, the revision process is really extensive.
Interesting. When you want to read someone else's poetry, who's your favorite poet to read?
There are so many terrific poets.
You know, Mark Turcott said the same thing when I tried to put him on the spot. And he was like, oh, I could give you a list.
There are a few contemporary poets who I'll mention because I really just love their work and some of their new books. Jericho Brown has this great book called The Tradition that I absolutely love. Victoria Chang has a book called Obit that is really amazing. And Chen Chen, who is my colleague at New England College, is a fantastic poet. And he has this new book called Your Emergency Contact Has Experienced an Emergency.
What a great name for a book.
Absolutely.
When you speak to a group, whether it's students or whether it's grown-ups, what is it that you want them to take away from what you're saying, or what that you want them to learn about poetry?
So I think the arts, they help us articulate who we are, what our lives mean, what it means to be human among other humans. So I think my main message for people is just poetry belongs to you. It is about you learning who you are, what you feel, what you experience. Language is so important for us to sort of make sense of what we understand. So my main message is exactly that. Poems are yours. They are about your life. They are about your emotions, your experiences. Go read a poem, go write a poem. It is your gift not only to other people who will read it, but also to yourself.
Thank you so much for the conversation today, Jennifer. It has been delightful.
This has been so amazing, Joan. Thank you so much for having me.
Jennifer Militello, Poet Laureate of the state of New Hampshire. She has a new book out, Identifying the Pathogen. She also has a memoir, Knock Wood, and she has books of poetry, including The Pact. And as she said, her poems have appeared in other publications, The Nation, New Republic, and also the Paris Review. It has been a real pleasure. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
My pleasure.
That is going to do it for me today, for the week, actually. Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez is next. She has a guest host, Natalie Ziemba, who's a Woodstock City Council member. They're going to be talking to Bridget Belcastro, candidate for McHenry Regional Superintendent of Schools, and Robert Held, a Chicago attorney and president of the Chicago Council of Lawyers and an anti-ICE activist. Remember, tomorrow, 1 to 4, it's the Democracy Stupid with Edwin Eisendrath, 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock. He always has a great assortment of guests. One of our favorite people, somebody who you heard on this show this week, Mark Jacob, is going to be one of his guests. Mark, of course, former Chicago Tribune and Sun-Times editor, now writes the Stop the Presses newsletter. Edwin's going to be talking with him. He's also going to be talking to the national voting rights correspondent for Mother Jones, Ari Berman. Scott Colum, district attorney for the 16th Judicial District of Minnesota, also happens to be a candidate for Senate. I meant Mississippi, not Minnesota. He's a judge in Mississippi and a Senate candidate in Mississippi. Oh, too many M's. And he's also going to talk with Daniel Squadron, who is with Forward Now, which is the parent company that owns us. He has a new book out. It is called The Fourth Branch: How State Government Can Save Our Union. Last but not least, David Pepper, a candidate for Ohio Lieutenant Governor. And we talked to David Pepper when his book came out. He is a real interesting and funny guy, and a great observer of politics. And then don't forget Out Chicago on Sunday, 11 to 1. Scott Duff, Ellen Miller. Enjoy brunch with them. They talk about the LGBT community and also the most recent headlines. After all of that goodness, we will be back on Monday with some goodness of our own. On Monday, I'm going to be talking to Greg Palast and Margaret Donovan, some of the people you have heard and love here in previous interviews on my show. So, did you write all that down? Because there is going to be a quiz, okay? There's going to be a 10-point quiz. Remember your homework for this weekend. Speaking of quizzes, your homework for this weekend is to do something that brings you joy, you know? Get out, literally smell the roses, take a walk, go to your favorite restaurant, go to a museum, go see a movie, read a book, something that gives you peace, something that reminds you of why you are in this fight and recharges your batteries. As Carl from Kankakee said, as of tomorrow, we are 100 days away from the midterms. You need all the strength you can get because it's going to get harder before it gets easier. Take care of yourselves, my friend. I will talk to you on Monday. Have a wonderful weekend. And you too, Lady B. And good night.